Tonight's guest speaker is an artist, musician, and author who weaves art, music, and storytelling together into an entertaining and informative cultural experience. Dave Kobrenski will share his experiences from nearly 2 decades of travel in West Africa, discuss social and cultural issues, and give demonstrations of the instruments he learned to play while living in West Africa. So please give me a warm, join me in giving Dave a warm welcome. Thank you.
Well, that was a good introduction for me too, because now I know what I'm going to do tonight. So, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. This is fun for me to be here and talk about my travels and talk about the music that I've been playing all these years and about my creative projects that have been inspired by my travels, my art and my music and my books, as well as some of the lessons, some of the big things that I've learned in my time in West Africa with some of the friends that I've made and people who become like family over there. And so I'm really excited to share with you all tonight some of my stories and experiences, and hopefully I will live up to the introduction, and this will be both cultural and entertaining. So I'm gonna go for that. I'm gonna shoot for that. I'm gonna start by playing by demonstrating a little bit of this very unique flute that is called the Fula flute, or in the Malinke language, tambi, and it's a 3-hole transverse flute, a side-blown flute that is very unique to West Africa, and I've spent many years apprenticing. It's kind of a nice way to start, just to kind of give you the little flavor of the music of the area. This is called the kamale and ngoni, and it's in a family of harp lutes from West Africa, and it has very old roots, even though this is a modern version of it. So, oh, hi, I'm Dave. So when people ask, what I do, sometimes I have a little hard time giving a straight answer, telling people exactly what the heck this is that I do. I'm an artist, I'm a musician, performer, world traveler, ethnomusicologist, anthropology buff, and now an author. And, it's a lot of stuff, but what does this all mean, really? Well, it means I'm unemployed. So, but hey, I've had some great adventures, and obviously over the years I've had lots of jobs to pay the bills. I all have to figure out how to do that. But then there's my work, the things that I consider to be my true work, my calling in life. And that has really been inspired by my travels in West Africa, which was a little bit serendipitous on how I got started there. Some connections when I was in school, studying as an illustration major and getting connected with the anthropology department there, and an internship that over the long term introduced me to the culture, the music, people of West Africa. And then years later, I ended up in the same part of West Africa where I had done a long internship with the anthropology department. So kind of my love for all things cultural and diverse led me to want to go to West Africa and to find out where the source of instruments like the djembé and even the banjo, which a lot of people don't even realize has its roots in West Africa. I really wanted to travel there to see for myself, the roots of this music. And so over the years, as I traveled, became better and better versed at the music and the culture, and made all these connections. My musical abilities started to grow in some different directions. When I grew up, I played guitar and piano and saxophone and a little bit of flute. And then when I found all these other instruments in West Africa, I was like totally swept away and wanted to do nothing but play the djembé and the flute and the kamale and ngoni and other instruments. And it brought me back year after year to West Africa to study with people, and probably more times than I should have gone. But I paid for it basically by coming back home and teaching. I taught at universities and in adult education programs. Anywhere that people had an interest for it, I taught people how to play the West African drums. It became a sort of this job that I didn't mean to have, but it worked out so well because over the course of a bunch of years that I built up this program, I was teaching 20 or 30 students every single night, and I was doing it 5 nights a week. And my students all over New Hampshire and Massachusetts and in the Boston area too were so eager for more that it justified my going back to West Africa every year as sort of like a business expense, even though really I was going there and just having the adventure of my life every time I would go there. But some of the projects that came out of it that also helped me support myself and earn a living during this time was some music projects that I formed over the years. And my first music project that focused on the music of West Africa was called Landaya. And it was a collaboration with a really amazing musician named Sion Kamara, who I became great friends with in the early 2000s when we met in Conakry in Guinea. So there's Sion, there's a younger me looking really happy behind the drum there. And it was great fun. And this project actually went on for about a decade or maybe more. It was this project that found a place in festivals and in cultural centers and in universities where we were able to present the real traditional music of West Africa with a really charismatic sort of ringleader in Sion, who was just able to charm and wow everybody with his playing, which was really, he's a virtuoso drummer. And so it was a real treat to spend that decade. So after I sort of moved on from that, I kind of wanted to combine my love for West African music with my love for jazz and R&B and funk and all that stuff. So I formed this project called Donkilo, and the word Donkilo means literally "come dance," because all music in West Africa is about community, about dancing, about celebrating, about being alive. And so we thought it was a fitting title for a fitting name for a music project that was really about bringing people together and dancing. my latest project is something that has sort of become my thesis after almost 2 decades of studying West African music, to really see if I could understand this music well enough to be able to write my own compositions and perform everything on the drums, the balafon, which is a wooden xylophone that I don't have with me tonight, the kamale and ngoni, the flutes, and various other instruments that I learned to play over the course of the decades. So Afro flute is my project that I just really wanted to see if I could create original music that the people in West Africa would love. So some artwork that I've made over the years, like I said, I was an art student in college. I grew up making art, and I just was really compelled to make some artwork about some of the festivals and music and people that I had encountered there, and loved working in watercolors. So just some of the paintings I've done over the years. And some of the drawings that I mentioned that I did, a lot of these I did on location in a village in central Guinea, along the Niger River. And some of the people, you think on the one hand, boy, they're so different than me, but then not really. You know, there's these things that make us all human, that unite us, you know, even across languages and across cultures, these ideas of family and of community, and of what makes us happy, what makes us sad, all of these things. For me, it was fascinating to be able to draw these people, and I really wanted to be able to portray in my drawings some of this character, this spirit, this life that I found in the people there, the joy that they exuded. Since I started traveling to West Africa, it's kind of all been in that direction. I've just been so compelled by the culture. I could have traveled other places too, I suppose, but once I started going to Guinea and started making friends and people who over the years became like family, I was almost obligated to keep going back, because the people expected me to. They said, you can't just form friendships like this and then just never come back. You have to come back. And so as long as I was able to, I went back almost every year, and I would spend sometimes 3 or 4 months there every year. So Guinea, of course, so here we have Africa, and then there is Guinea. Very interesting, very diverse ecosystem in Guinea. You go from savanna to forest to mountain highlands, back down to coastal floodplains, all in this one tiny little country that is really about maybe a square area, you know, maybe like the size of Oregon, I think. And also I should mention that for a country about the size of Oregon, there's about 70 distinct languages spoken there. Wow. The diversity is staggering. Most people, particularly in the coastal area near the capital city, speak French. And I had to also learn how to speak French while I was there, because nobody speaks English there. But also Fula and Malinke and Susu are big over there. And I really did my best at not offending anybody in those languages. Every year I'd pack up my bags like this, 80 pounds on my back, and get on the Royal Air Maroc plane and end up in the Conakry airport here, and get into a taxi that looked like this. That was literally being held together with rope and tape and whatnot, and get dropped off someplace like this for 3 months. And I loved it. But really what brought me there, the person who brought me there, was a man named Famoudou Konaté. And he is known as the Grand Master of the djembé. He is one of the people who has brought the djembé drum to the public eye over the course of the last 40 or 50 years. Famoudou Konaté is really the elder of the tradition, and one of the remaining people alive who is a link to the old tradition. He is just really an amazing resource. And he turned 80 this last year, no, 81 this year, I think he turns. And he's still healthy, knock on wood, because he really is just this living link to an era that is quickly fading away. And so the djembé is this goblet-shaped drum. I have it hiding over here. The djembé right here, it's a hand drum. And then the dunduns are always played with the djembé, and these are the barrel-shaped bass drums. And there's always 3, the dundumba, sangba, and kenkini. And this is what all of the drums look like together. We've got small kankani here, the sangba in the middle, and then the big dunamba, which means literally the big drum. And all together, these drums form the basis of the traditional Malinke drum ensemble that is really at the heart of every festival, of every religious ceremony, of every event, from baptisms to weddings to you name it. These drums are at the heart of it. So this is where I spent most of my time in Guinea. It was a little village called Sangbarala, just past the small town of Kouroussa, which is really sort of the only outpost in the area. It's people still call it a village, but it feels more like it's a town these days. But I would go there to take part and to witness festivals like this. So they're traditional things that were happening there. Their music that happened all the time throughout the different seasons for different festivals, whether it's Tabaski or Ramadan or any of these other things that I mentioned. Always just so full of life and so full of joy. And it was just a real marvel for me to find myself in this village, seeing these things and being around these people and being like right in the middle of this kind of event. And it was just like, for an anthropology buff, it was kind of a dream come true. This was still an area that was relatively untouched by the Western hand, I suppose you'd say. Not completely, not entirely, but very remote. The traditions were carrying on the way that they had been for millennia. And then while I was there traveling in West Africa, I had this idea like, gosh, I just love this music and this culture so much. I just really wanted to share with people the joy that I felt when I was there, and the joy that the people who lived there shared with me. And so I wanted to write some books that really explored both their culture through my own experiences, but also through my studies of anthropology and also my ongoing work with ethnomusicology, that was to understand the roots of their music. This is the first book here, Joliba Crossing. While I was there, of course, I was doing lots of drawing and photography, had a fun time making all of these handmade maps, taking pages from my sketchbook. So I just wanted to give you a feel for what some of this book looks like, with a lot of my artwork in it. And there's my painting of Famoudou, the Grandmaster himself. So, and I included in the book too, for students of the music, transcriptions of very, very old traditional music that really wasn't documented anywhere. And so part of it was what was really just wanting to document. And Famoudou also wanted me to document it because he realized that the younger generation was just not as interested in the music and the culture as they were, because they were being lured away to the city to find work and other things. And so Famoudou was really sort of desperate to have students that could transcribe the stuff, because the music was never written out. It was always passed orally over the course of centuries and centuries. So for the first time, there's a generation of guys like me, guys and gals like me, who are going there and learning this music and writing it down as a means to help preserve the tradition, so that it can be taught again to other generations. It's kind of fun. I really wanted to make this book look like it was pages that had been buried in the sand. I was really inspired by looking at the old manuscripts from the libraries in Timbuktu in Mali, that during times of war and strife, they would literally bury all of their archives under the sand and unearth them sometimes centuries later. And that's why they had, until recently, the oldest archive of manuscripts anywhere on the planet. So anyway, so this was my what I felt like was my contribution to the culture. And I spent a lot of time also going back there to pay tribute to the people who were in the book, because that was a form of respect. The village tradition says that if you are part of the village family, which I was at this point after spending almost 2 years there, that if you become successful, then the whole village should benefit. So I went back there and I paid gifts to the elders and found everybody who was in any drawing or any photograph, and made a gift to them. And it was really a pretty wonderful thing. But during this time, I met a man who kind of changed my life, and this was Lansini Konde, who was the master of these flutes that I played for you earlier. And there's Lansini right there. And I met him in 2003 or 2004, and we became friends right away. And I became one of his flute students. I should say I became probably his only flute student, because these flutes are notoriously difficult to play, and not many people even try. And there aren't even that many flute players in West Africa who play these. So he was thrilled to have a student, and I was crazy enough to try. And so I worked with him year after year. So a wonderful, generous man who shared a lot of his tradition with me, and for that I'm super grateful. And we became great friends and formed a friendship that was more like brothers over the years. And it's funny to see a picture of me from like 20 years ago. But and these are the flutes that Lansini makes as a master flute maker as well. Really beautiful. They're made out of a wood called tambi. The name of the flute is tambi, but the name of the wood they're made out of is also called tambi, and it's a vine that grows along the banks of the Niger that you can literally hear when you're in one of these areas where these grow, the wind moving through them and just kind of whistling through them. And they're the perfect instrument, perfect wood for making an instrument out of. And they're wrapped in leather, sometimes in sheepskin, and decorated with cowrie shells. And the embouchure here, the mouthpiece, is actually formed out of beeswax. It's this type of black beeswax that comes from these tiny stingless bees, very tiny bees that don't sting you, thank goodness. And their nest is very high up in these trees, and they send the kids up, scampering up these trees to collect the stuff. And they use that beeswax for patching their roofs, for fixing their shoes, and for making flutes. It's pretty amazing. They're very resourceful about it. So we would hang out, Lansini and I. He had a workshop in Conakry, and also a cafe where all of the unemployed guys would hang out and drink small cups of rocket fuel. And and I got to know Lansini and his boys and his whole family. He has a very large family, and it was just really wonderful to over the years become sort of a part of the family, and just kind of see how daily life, transpired, with a family, a village family who had moved to Conakry and was trying to make it in the big city. But they were all village folks. None of them, except one or two in his family, know how to read or write, because it's very rare for kids from the village to have the opportunity to go to school. And all of his sons and daughters are well versed in the musical traditions. These are a couple of his sons here. That was Lance and Mamadou and Lai, and really wonderful people. And they are really keeping the tradition alive today as well. And the way that Lansini and his family made a living in Conakry, which is a real trick, like I said, the unemployment rate soaring upwards towards 98%. But Lansini organizes these festivals called Dembadons, which are basically these parties for the bride to be. And they are these raucous events that use all this traditional music. And they really only happen in Conakry because they're a paid event. The musicians get paid for it, the dancers get paid for it, and people in the village don't have money. So typically they don't throw Dembadon festivals in the village. So you get a taste for what the music is like, and how energetic that music is. And all the while, all of the attendees in their finest fabrics have come out to dance and to celebrate the bride to be who will be going away. And everybody's just dressed up absolutely beautifully and dancing. There's such joyous occasions, really just amazing. So while I was there living with Lansini and his family, we would go to these Dembadon festivals sometimes 3-4 times a week, because that was their job. He and the boys and his wife and his daughters and everybody would go, and they would perform the dances and the music. And And because I had been playing this music myself now at this point for more than a decade, I became part of the band, which was a real treat. And I remember the first time that we finished one of these Dembadon events, and at the end of it, the way the Dembadons work is that they put out a big plate, and everybody throws money into the plate or sticks the money to their foreheads, this sort of thing. But at the end, there's all this money just like littered all over the ground, and they collect it all up, and all of the drummers and dancers split up the money. And it was a real honor for me at the end of one of these nights where they handed me 5,000 Guinea francs and said, "You played real good today, Dave." And I said, 5,000 Guinea francs. Wow, that's about 70 cents. But but it was my first paying gig in West Africa, so I was really proud of that. And so some of Lansini's boys here performing the traditional Dunumba dances for these Dembadons, and really amazing cultural events to see. But earning a living with the Dembadon festivals, not an easy thing, but obviously they were culturally important. It was satisfying work for the people to be able to do what they grew up doing, and keeping the traditions alive, and that it was a family business, but income fluctuated wildly. It was dependent on the generosity of the party goers. Lots of musicians and dancers meant that money was split up. It was not very much money. And during the rainy season, no go. So half of the year, basically, he was sort of out of work. And that, not to mention festivals like Ramadan, where basically nobody does anything. And they only take place in Conakry too, which sort of kept him in Conakry, which is not the nicest place in the world to live, especially when you were born and raised in this beautiful village. So Lansini and I, over the years, talked about a solution to how he could earn a little bit more income. And we formed this company called the Kouroussa Flute Company. And because the flutes that he makes are gorgeous. And I became his flute making apprentice as well. And over the years that I apprenticed with him, I learned the craft and the trade of making the flutes. And in fact, the flutes that I were playing for you before are flutes that I made. And so we decided that, I could bring flutes home for Lansini here to the United States and sell them at shows and at festivals and online and this or that. And from his Dembadon, his family Dembadon business, Lansini and his family of about 20 or so people who all lived in the same family compound, Lansini made at the time roughly around $400 a year, and pretty meager living, of course. And once we started the Kouroussa Flute Company, one of his flutes I would sell for $150 here, which was kind of a bargain probably here for the beauty and the craftsmanship that went into it. And I would send that money right back to Lansini. In addition to that, so here's some of Lansini's flutes here, and here's some of the flutes that I started making. I was having a problem with the wooden flutes made out of the vine cracking here in the cold, dry weather in the winter. So he said, make them out of whatever you want. So I started making these flutes out of, this is actually genuine PVC. So, and they're very durable, and they sound exactly the same as the wooden flutes. And so the way that the master-apprentice relationship works in West Africa is that masters train apprentices as a sort of retirement plan, because they know that someday the master will not be doing that craft anymore, and they need some social security. So the apprentice relationship is such that for as long as the master is living, the apprentice will give the master a share of whatever they make, even if the master has no hand in doing that anymore. So that was the relationship that Lansini and I had too, where every time I made one of my flutes and sold them to somebody, money would go back to Lansini. So Kouroussa Flute Company was a thing that was really, really good for Lansini, and we had a blast doing it. And so, yay, flutes. During this time, though, I was like, man, I got to write a new book. My first book was already out, so I really wanted to get another book out because I love books. I love writing and talking about this music. And so the backstory with Drawing on Culture was that in 2015, Lansini and I decided to buy this beautiful car. It's a 1982 Renault, and it was about the nicest car we could find. I spent about $400 or $450 on it, which was kind of a small fortune over there. And then probably about another $300 putting new tires and new motor, all kinds of stuff into it. And we decided to take this car and drive it on these roads over 400 kilometers. And it didn't always go so well. We broke down repeatedly. But finally we got to the Niger River and we ferried it across the Niger River. And this is some of my favorite pictures of us pulling the car across in the barge. And then we came here to Lansany's village, where he hadn't been back to in many years. And we lived right in there. And so that was home for about 4 months. This was an opportunity for Lansany to reconnect with family that he hadn't seen in years. It's really hard and actually very dangerous to do the drive all the way to the village and without proper vehicle. I'm not even saying ours was proper, it was not. But it was an opportunity for Lansany to go back and reconnect to his roots. And reconnecting to his roots, in a big part, meant going back to the place where he grew up and where he learned how to play the music. And when Lansany was a boy, he was a shepherd. So his job was to stay out here in this field all day long and sometimes all night long and tend the cattle and the sheep. And while he was out there, somebody had given him a flute. He didn't know how to play it. And I asked him, how he learned how to play the flute, if he had a master. And I said, Lansany, who was your master? And he said, I didn't have one. He said, God gave me this music. And so he learned to become, he became a virtuoso musician sitting in this very field. And he hadn't seen this field since he was a boy. When he left the village, probably around 16 or 17, he left and never came back. So it was a really emotional experience for him to come back here and see this place that was so meaningful to him. And it was really pretty remarkable for me to go there with him. And the village is this place that it seems sometimes that like time just decided to leave alone. It has this timeless quality. Certainly things change. I mean, you see people riding bikes and maybe even dirt bikes through the village these days. And this actually here is the village gas station, where they have liter bottles of gas that you can put into your motorcycle or whatever you happen to be driving through there. But this is also the tree where the community gathers for events. And so we spent a lot of time walking through the village, greeting people, doing all of the traditional things. Like it took us weeks to greet everybody because you can't gloss over that. It's such an important part of the tradition, the greetings. That by the time the weeks had gone by, I had met like everybody in the village, and I got to know this village very well. But it was there that, like I was saying before, that I decided, like, wow, I got so much downtime here and I'm meeting so many people. How cool would it be if I just started to draw the people? And as I was getting to know them, so that's what I would do. I would ask their permission to sketch them and or to photograph them. And a lot of the drawings that I did were based on this time here with them in the village of Senankoro. And again, just wonderful, wonderful people, joyful, really just a treat. So yes, I set up an art studio in Kouroussa, which was the little town that I was telling you about nearby. Famoudou had an extra room and one of his family's houses in the compound, and he said I could set up an art studio there. So I had my little room with just a chair and a desk in it, and nothing else. So a bed, a chair, and a desk, and one tiny little window, no electricity. And so I would go there, and from the time that the sun would come up and start coming through the window, I'd pull up my sketch pad and my materials, and I would start drawing. And while I was there in Kouroussa, I would do that from sun up till sundown and make all these drawings here. And had the opportunity, of course, to show people the drawings that I was doing right away. So all of these drawings became incorporated into the book that tells a lot of this story as well in greater detail. So I was very proud of this book, and it was a real treat to be able to share those drawings with the people in the village as well. And so after that trip, there was still this burning desire to tell more of these stories. It was so hard to convey to people in those short books everything that I had experienced and gone through in these now 2 decades of returning to West Africa every year. And so this is the book that's coming out in 2022. And I'm not going to say too much about it, actually, because you're just going to have to like sign up on the mailing list. But this is my first full-length book, and it'll be coming out sometime in 2022. And so during the pandemic, it was a really great opportunity for me to sit down and write down all of these stories, and just so excited to be able to tell Lansany's story, of his life story, finally, and to tell the story of all of my journeys and of Famoudou, just all of the crazy, wonderful, amazing things that happened to me there. And also the transformations that I went through as a young man growing into a man living in two worlds, basically. I mean, I was spending so much time in West Africa every year and coming back to the United States. And sometimes it was really disorienting going from one to the other, because I would get so used to being in one culture and the way the things were. And coming back to the United States, the worldview was so different, and I would just feel so disoriented. But there was this real transformation that was occurring during these years that was really important, and I thought it was really important to write about it. And so I sat down to start writing this book, waking up 4:30 in the morning and write until 9:30 or 10 every day and get these stories out. And I did that for 2 years, and finally I finished the book, and and then Lansini's oldest son, Fode, who was the only member of the family that had schooling, was really a brilliant young man, and had secured a really nice job in Conakry. And he was really one of the big reasons why the family was able to sustain themselves in Conakry for so long. And he tragically passed away last year. And Lansini was devastated. So I'm going to try to hold it together. And sadly, Lansini passed away 2 weeks ago. I hadn't intended this talk to go this way, but it's just so recent and so fresh. And so, of course, now the family, 20 some odd members of the family, are now without their two breadwinners, and they're absolutely devastated. Between Fode passing away 1 year ago and then Lansini, I've had to very quickly move into the mode of figuring out how I can help them, because they don't have the means now to even go back to the village, to return to their roots. The trip is too costly. They don't have a place to live there anymore, and the cost of living in Conakry has risen so much that they can't afford to stay where they had been staying, because both Fode and Lansini are now gone. So, it's just been a very interesting thing. Just as I'm getting ready to launch this book that I was so excited about, that told this man's story in great part, to lose him, and to also know that he'll never get to personally, reap the rewards of what I hoped the book would bring, both in terms of exposure for his culture, but also for him as well. So I'm now trying to just understand how to help his family. Their rent in Conakry is about $400 a month for the 20 some odd people to live there, which is, it's like, we think of that as like, wow, $400 a month for 20 something people to live in like a 6 or 7 room compound. Because the poverty is so high, most landlords require a year in advance. And so Lansini's family, now just 2 weeks after Lansini has passed away, is being evicted from their place, because the landlord knows that now that without Fode and without Lansini, they'll never be able to pay the rent. So they have now just until October 1st to be out of their place and to find someplace else. And it's not a whole lot of time. So, of course, I've done what I've always done, is scrounge up my money and ask my family and my friends and everybody to kind of pitch in. And so we sent them the first $400 just the other day to get them by, to pay for some food, to get them well stocked up. But I'm now trying to figure out how to get them the year in advance that they would need. And so one of the things that Lansini and I did years ago was we recorded a CD for him, also as a way for him to earn some income. And it's a beautiful CD. We recorded it in Conakry, and it's Lansini playing solo flute, and it's just this marvelous thing, this marvelous piece of music. And so I'm using this CD, this album, as a way to raise some funds for Lansini, as I always have. All of the money has gone to him, but now it'll go towards his family. It's a sliding scale donation from $1 to whatever you want to pay to get the music, and all that money would just go straight to Lansini's family. So that's it. That's my presentation, and I didn't realize when I started doing this presentation that it was going to have such a sad ending. But I really hope that through my work that I'm doing, even here tonight, about spreading the word about Lansany's music and his culture and about my travels in West Africa, that I can carry on his legacy. I think maybe I'm going to leave it there. And thank you so much for being such a wonderful and attentive audience. I really appreciate it.